Welcome to our second World Cup date here on the Soccer Down Here Network. My name is Jason Longshore, joined today by Jessica Sharman and Kelly Francis. The whole crew is together. How are y'all doing?
Good. I just landed back from being in Baltimore, so traveled, but also trying to be as well-versed in all of the games as possible.
We'll get you caught up.
And I'm pretty pumped. I'm sure people were following my mixed emotions from today, but ended up well, and all these years of waiting.
It's like one of your favorite teams played today. It's kind of crazy. It sort of flew under the radar how much you love that team, but I mean there's no reason why I should support them.
Yeah, that'll be like how Tuesday will be for Kelly and I. So hopefully that will go well.
Yeah. Let's
get into the results from today. First one was a surprise. I think maybe the biggest surprise of the World Cup so far. Italy 2-1 over Australia. Barbara Bonansea from Juventus with both goals for Italy. 95th minute goal deep in stoppage time. It was the latest winner in regulation time in World Cup history. Australia did what we've kind of all thought they would do, like 16 shots. They were very active going forward, but just defensively, not so much.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, Jason, about how this World Cup right now has been all about the forwards. There's been fantastic, creative, attacking soccer, but just not good enough in the back. And I feel like Australia had several chances. There were goals given, VAR ruled them out, but they had those warning signs, but they just switched off towards the end. The goalkeeper came for a corner that she probably shouldn't have, and they were punished. So Australia are going to rue those missed chances, look at their defense, and realize they probably threw away those 3 points. They were dominating the game, and they'll be disappointed to not get an early win in this World Cup.
Yeah, I've got them in the final, and now I'm wondering if I've jinxed them or something. Kelly, what'd you think of Italy, though, a team that we haven't really talked about that much because they haven't played a ton of top-quality opponents after qualifying, but they looked really good today.
They did. I think one of the most astonishing or remarkable, memorable things to me was just how determined they were. You could see at the end of the match with Australia when they just kept hammering that last, felt like 20 minutes of the match. Australia just kept pressure high. They kept going, and Italy just sat back, defended what they needed to defend, and then when they got the chance to counter and eventually get that goal, you could see that that's a team that stood their ground, and then come at the end of the match, they were full in and full out. And so that's something that's really impressive to me about any national team, honestly, is when it's literally the last seconds of the match, even in stoppage time, and you still push forward and you get that last goal, because that's just perseverance in my mind.
Yeah,
and I agree with Kelly.
Go ahead, Jess.
Sorry, I was saying, but you just got to think that Italy were the underdogs coming into this. Mm-hmm. So in their minds, you would think that they might be willing to settle for that 1-1 tie, but instead, in the 95th minute, they're still giving 110%, which shows that they're not going to be written off. They're not an underdog in their eyes. They're someone that deserves 3 points, and they did it. And Australia, like I say, they're going to be bummed out. I think that means whoever they're facing next is going to have a tough opponent, and they've got to watch out for Kerr. I was disappointed with her PK, Jason. I know you had her down as a top scorer, and I thought she got lucky with the rebound, honestly.
Oh, she absolutely did. The pressure seemed to be hitting Australia, and they've got a lot of questions behind the scenes with new manager who came in very shortly before the tournament, and all kinds of accusations, but also like a lot of the lack of true explanation as to why the previous manager was dismissed, and maybe the dysfunction is a little bit bigger than we all thought. And then on the Italian side, I think the investment that you've seen from the professional clubs in Serie A and the growth of Serie A had a massive impact on Italy and their ability to withstand that pressure and and keep organized inside of, Australia going for it, and Italy never really lost their resolve at all. I think the second game kind of showed some of that too, and maybe in a little bit of a surprising way with Brazil and Jamaica. It didn't feel like a 3-0 win for Brazil. Like, I didn't feel like Jamaica was dominated in any way. I don't think anyone expected what we saw from Brazil, though, because they had come into the tournament 9 straight losses, and it was the veteran, Cristiana, with 3 goals, hat trick, first of the tournament, 34 years old. It is the oldest player to have a hat trick in the tournament's history, beating Carly Lloyd from 2015 in the final. But Jamaica, they had 14 shots. They had opportunities, Jess.
Yeah, they certainly did. They looked dangerous. They were using their speed. They put the Brazilians under a lot of pressure. It was interesting to see several of the centre-backs and defensive line picked up yellow cards because they just couldn't handle the Jamaican force going forward. But again, like we mentioned yesterday with the South African game, I think the difference was the professional level of soccer that these girls are used to. You've got players in Brazil that are used to playing. They're an older team. I know the commentator on my stream mentioned several times this is probably the Brazilians' last chance at glory. They had a 41-year-old veteran in her 7th, was it the 7th or 8th World Cup that she was playing in?
Formiga in her 7th World Cup. It's amazing. And she did not look like she was 41 in this match.
Oh, not at all. I mean, her first World Cup was the year I was born. That's just, it's insane. But the quality of the Brazilians shone through. And honestly, when I saw Marta wasn't available, I was worried, but it really shut me up. Same. I think so much with the Brazilian times, the light is on Marta. She's an incredible player. But, sometimes all the attention is on this one pivotal player that you sort of forget about this quality that Brazil has in the squad, and they up their game. Yes, 9 straight losses, but today they came out, the World Cup, and they were taking it seriously. And I tell you, I had written them off a little bit, and they just came out and shone today.
All right, Kelly, I know you've been big on the Reggae Girls. What'd you think of your Jamaican squad in Game 1?
You're absolutely right. In no way did this feel like a 3-0 loss to the Jamaican girls. They came out and they put pressure where they could put pressure. I mean, Brazil, when they are firing on all cylinders, which I think we all can say that we were pretty stunned to see them do today, they're incredibly dangerous at all points in time. I think for me, the attack wasn't 100% fluid. I think maybe nerves got to the best of them. And Bunny, of course, is going to be incredible any game she's in. But when you have your wingers not servicing balls in an efficient manner to Bunny in the middle, or when crosses are being sniffed out, or when they're running down the wings and then losing the ball to Brazilian players, then you're having a little bit of issue with your momentum going forward. And yes, they put pressure and they had those sparkling chances. I mean, that was very clear and evident that their speed was going to be a real threat in the game when we're talking about, I think, 4 minutes in, they're on a counterattack, and the goalkeeper for Brazil had to come out almost half midfield to stop the counterattack. But let's also talk about just how incredible of a game this is. And Jess, you can comment to this, but the goalkeepers in this game were insane. Schneider, at 19 years old, putting up the game that she did, honestly, she was remarkable. And I know that 3-0 doesn't say or prove a lot on her point, but I thought out of the entire Jamaican team, the entire Reggae Girls, Schneider was most impressive this game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Kelly. The goalkeeping in this World Cup has been fantastic. I think for too long, when people talk about the female game, one of the weakest points they have found and one of the biggest gaps between the female and the men's game has been the quality of the goalkeepers. And for anyone that's watching this World Cup, they're starting to realize that, okay, these female goalkeepers can hang. These female goalkeepers are doing everything that you expect of the male goalkeepers. Yes, they may be physically smaller, but they're making the right decisions. They're coming out for the right balls. And what a fantastic performance she had. And when you look at that penalty save, 19 years old, you're 1-0 down already. She needed to make that save for Jamaica to have any chance in that game. She guessed right, but it wasn't just a good guess. It was a great save. And I'm excited to see her. I think she's only going into her junior year in college, and she's got a really bright future ahead. And potentially the USA missed out on one when she switched her allegiance to Jamaica.
They did. Her grandparents are Jamaican. Mother was born in Jamaica, and she grew up in New Jersey. She's at at UNC Wilmington going into her junior year this fall, and Sydney Schneider put on as good of a goalkeeping performance as we've seen in the tournament so far, even conceding 3. I thought she kept Jamaica in it on breaks and kept her cool. You know, I thought in that moment where the broadcasters said that the staff for Jamaica hadn't decided on who was going to be the goalkeeper. They kind of came in rotating the 2 goalkeepers, and they decide on Schneider last night, and she delivers that kind of performance. That's got to earn her the spot going forward, I would think.
Absolutely. If you don't reward her for her performance, then that says something about the coaching staff. I mean, she put up an amazing game against, like I said, when Brazil is firing on all cylinders, they are 100% a real threat to any team in this tournament. And she stood her ground against one of the most veteran teams in this World Cup. So yeah, absolutely. If she didn't earn it, I don't know what they're expecting an earn it would be.
There's an awesome story over at the undefeated.com about the whole process of Sydney Schneider joining the Jamaican national team. And it's crazy to think that she wasn't even sure as a junior in high school if she would play in college. She didn't think she was good enough. And now she's in a World Cup starring for Jamaica. It's nuts. All right, Kelly, we're going to take a step back, and I'm just going to say what the score is, and then Jess, have at it. England 2-1 over Scotland.
Well, I'm going to start with the positives. It was a fantastic start for England, and it couldn't have been better in my eyes. We'll get into the call that led to the penalty, but Nikita Paris, what a fantastic PK she took. She's had a lot of pressure on her shoulders going into this World Cup. She's got high expectations, and she sort of silenced all that expectation with a great penalty finish. We had several other chances. A couple of times the ball's in the back of the net again. VAR or offside calls came to our sort of disappointment, and then a great second goal as well. Halftime came too soon for me. I think at halftime, the Scottish team kind of got a kick up the butt. I'm sure their coach wasn't too happy with their performance and sort of woke them up and said, you know, you've got nothing to lose at this point. This is your World Cup. Don't get beat by the English this bad. And when Scotland came back out, it was a completely different game. England took their foot off the gas, 2-0, the most dangerous scoreline in soccer, they say, because you do get complacent. And I think that's what happened with England. So obviously finished up 2-1. I think we actually got away with it a little bit in the end. Scotland has several other chances. Keeper came out strong. But I have to say, if both these teams can put together a 90-minute performance, I think both of them will get out of the group, and not just get out of the group, but to potentially make a run in the tournament if they can put together a solid 90-minute performance.
Yeah, I agree. I think both can definitely get out of the group. And I'll give England a little more credit. I felt like you see a lot of times in World Cups where the true contenders don't come out and play their best game in game one because they know they're going to be there for a while. And it felt like England at about the 60-minute mark or so took their foot off the gas, but stayed for the most part in control. They did give up the one goal in the 79th minute, and it was a little dicier at the end than they would have liked, but it felt like a very mature performance from a team that expects to be there for the entire tournament. And England, I don't think, gave you any reason to think that they won't be.
No, I'd say it's fair. I was disappointed with the goal we conceded. Another defensive error, a little bit too similar to the men's team, trying to play the ball out the back and just getting caught short with those passes. And that's something we need to clean up on. We play a nice, attractive soccer. I think we play some great passing forward football. The goal that got ruled out from Ellen White was an incredible through ball, a good look. But we do have to clean up a few things on the back because, again, Scotland's a good side, but as you move deeper into the tournament and you play potentially more dangerous teams with more attacking prowess, we have to be more careful about turning over the ball in dangerous positions.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's got to get better, but I feel like it's a pretty good start. The big storyline out of this, and you mentioned it, and Kelly, I want you to chime in, is handballs, VAR, this refereeing as a whole. The handball definitions have changed going into this tournament, and I think we're seeing a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty about it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because now, and Jess and I talked about this off air. It's kind of hard now to not have every game possibly in with a penalty or have some sort of penalty in there for handballs. I to probably not Jess's delight, was actually rooting for Scotland in this game. I thought that they played really well. I thought it was a very level match. Them sort of having the Cinderella story in here and being their first time in the World Cup, I wanted them to come out and play well, and I think they did. But I think that that unfortunate call went against them, and I can understand, and I know by definition of the book, her arm is in an unnatural position, quote unquote, right? And she's 3 yards from the ball. So in my mind, look, it's an athlete in motion. If I knew any athlete that was able to control their extremities at all times while in motion, I'd like to meet one, because I play soccer all the time. And as Jess does, your body goes in unnatural positions sometimes because you're just trying to move at any way possible. Yes, it was a handball by definition, but there's got to be some sort of redefining of the rules, because in that case, any and all physical touch of the ball on the arm, whether it's purposeful or not, is going to be ruled a handball. And I think we are basically brushing a very, very broad stroke for something that should be really more defined, in my opinion.
I feel like they're trying to get there. You know, it's been probably the longest running complaint outside of offside, and that rule is better definition of what truly a handball is. I mean, I feel like after games over the last 3-4 years, like the common refrain on Twitter is, we don't know what a handball is. It's like we don't know what a catch is in the NFL. We don't know what a handball is. They did a couple of things in the rules going into this tournament. I think they made it worse maybe than they made it better. They used a definition or a quote of if the arm is outside of the silhouette. And that's something you're going to start to hear a lot more on broadcasts. They said that arms by your sides are okay. The IFAB, the International Football Rules Authority, did not want the situation where defenders are running around with their arms behind their back. They said arms by sides are okay. But one thing they did say specifically was that arms or hands above shoulder height are determined to be, quote, rarely a natural position. And okay, I can somewhat buy that, although I think there's times where they will be. Something that Christina Unkel said that is not in the rule definition, but we've talked about deliberate a lot, and I think that's been the general level, the threshold going into this tournament was deliberate handball or accidental. Christina Unkel used a phrase, an expected play, when she was describing it, that it was an expected play and the arm was outside the silhouette, so therefore it's a handball. That is so vague, Jess, that I don't know if they made it worse or better with these new definitions and this new explanation. I think it's more complicated.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Jason. As a goalkeeper who has defenders in front of them, at this point, I'm terrified about playing a game and thinking about how my defenders are going to have to change the way they play based on fear of someone deliberately even potentially crossing a ball and striking in the arms. We've seen penalties given in the Women's World Cup where players are pointing, giving this instructional direction, and someone striking a ball up into their arm. These kind of things, that's a natural part of a game, and I get it. You have to be careful. But at the same time, if you're changing the way these players play because of fear of a handball, there is an issue there. We do not need to impact the quality of the soccer we're seeing for fear of handballs. And my biggest issue with this is the use of the VAR. You've got to think about how hard, and I think it was Fran Kirby actually striking that ball. And I tell you, Fran strikes the ball hard as hell. The player, the Scottish lady, and remember, I'm a complete English fan through and through here. I thought it was a hard call in the time. She's 3.2 yards away from the player. She's putting in a full speed cross. In real time, you could barely tell whether it struck the player's hand. Now, when you're slowing these things down for VAR, I understand you want to give fair calls, but when you're putting it in slow-mo, is that fair considering that the player doesn't get a chance to play the game in slow-mo? So how are they meant to get their hands out the way in the same way you're expecting them to do in a slow-motion replay? So, yes, I was happy the penalty went in, but I did feel some sort of, pain for the Scots because I thought it was cruel. And my biggest fear is how many penalties are we going to see in this World Cup? I think there's been pretty much almost one penalty a game on average at this point. Mm-hmm. And I just fear that, one, the referees are now going to VAR so often, and two, is it fair on defenders to change the way and the style they play?
Yeah, it's really complicated. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this throughout the tournament, but Kelly, I want to leave it here. In the broadcast on Fox, Allie Wagner, former U.S. international, I think one of the best color commentators in the United States, male, female, any sport. She's outstanding, but she said something that I thought was really interesting. She questioned on if video assistant referees should be judging on handballs, period. What do you think?
I agree. So when I was traveling, I wasn't able to listen to the commentary. I just watched it without audio. And I didn't get a chance to listen to that, but I would absolutely agree. I feel like handballs are something that have to be seen. And I know that a ref doesn't have the ability to see everything. So in that way, yes, a video review on a handball is sometimes necessary if a ref isn't looking in the same direction, right, be whatever it is, as long as they're notified of it. But I think that, yeah, there's got to be a determination of an intent. And I think that that's where the rules don't apply fully. There has to be some sort of definition of, was it an intent or was it not an intent? And I got into an argument with somebody about this on Twitter. By the rules, I understand what a handball is. I'm very well aware of that, but there's got to be some sort of an intent. Like Jess said, the girl's 3+ yards away in motion. How is she, the player, the defender, supposed to be able to then judge the trajectory of the ball, judge the movement of the player, and then know purposefully where to stick her arm out, quote unquote, outside of the silhouette for that to have been a handball. So in that case, in my mind, the intent isn't there. So the handball meeting, it just doesn't make any sense in my mind. So yes, I would agree with that idea that the ref should have full and utter control over a handball. But I do understand the circumstances sometimes where a ref is not able to see everything that's going on in the match.
Yeah, I think it's the way it's utilized. I think it's more of mechanics as opposed to the rule saying they can't do it, because, like you said, there's going to be situations where, it happens behind a referee's back or they're distracted by something else and they don't see it. I think if the referee asks for the help on did it strike their arm, okay, cool. I'm fine with that. But this situation, to me, there was no question on the call about, whoa, we think there was a handball there. There was no real reaction, I thought, from the England team that, hey, we didn't get a call that we expected here. And in VAR,
I think Fran was the only one that called for it. Fran, the person taking the cross.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like she was demanding about it either. It was like, she saw it. It was right in front of her. But that's it. And play continued. It felt like, if you go back to and this would have fallen under that clear and obvious definition, it didn't feel clear and obvious. It didn't feel like that to me. And if you're going to talk about a natural silhouette, when you're stepping to try to block a cross, and I didn't feel like the defender was trying to reach her arm out to block the cross. I felt like she was trying to position her body to block the cross. Her arm's going to move outside of her frame. I mean, it's just physics, I think. I
absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with you. She was trying to position her body to be what blocks the ball, not her arm. But in this case, if we're still talking about this whole idea that the ref should be the one that issues that penalty, we have to still remember that the ref did go to the sideline and look at VAR and make that determination for herself.
Yeah,
so
she
in
did
this
go
case,
take a look.
True. Yeah. So VAR in this point did say, hey, it looks like there's a possible handball. So in this case, the ref, in my opinion, if I'm the ref, that's a very, very weak call. I don't give that. But then again, I'm not a ref, and I don't, I think about intent on certain things. So I think
that's the issue, Kels. That's the clear issue, is that no matter what, VAR empowers humans to make decisions. Soccer is always going to be a game of interpretation. And until we have a rule that is easy to interpret, this referee on the field is going to make one decision. Tomorrow's referee, let's just say it's you out there, Kelly. Let's just say you're a referee. Tomorrow, you're not going to make that call. And that's the issue right now is, yes, VAR empowers the referees by giving them a second look. But until the rules are clear, how can we possibly have consistency through using that VAR? And that's the issue.
I think that's it 100%. And that's what's been lost in the discussion for me, is there's been a lot of criticism of VAR and like, oh, well, you wanted VAR and now you got it. VAR is another tool. It's more information for the referee to ultimately make the decision. The rule itself, when it comes to handling, is not defined enough. It's not clear enough, and it's way too open to interpretation. And I feel like they tried to define it in these changes, and they've actually made it worse. I think it's harder to call now than it was before these rules went into place ahead of this tournament.
Absolutely. It's become more of this whole cluster of, well, is this the right handling, and what is the right handling? And then, like Jess said, 100%, you were spot on. It is about interpretation, and it's about the consistency of refs, and then also the empowering of refs in general to make calls. So I feel like there does need to be sort of a reevaluation of the rule. Not only that, but other certain rules as well. But as you saw in the Brazilian game, there was a moment, and I can't remember who it was on the Brazilian team, who was trying to bomb forward on the left side and clearly handled the ball. So there are instances where what they're saying, as far as the rules justified, make absolute sense. But then there are these special cases where, like we saw in the England-Scotland game, where it's a little bit more gray area. So yeah, there needs to be a clear definition of the rule to where it's black and white and there is no gray area, but trying to determine specific situations from others, I can understand how it's difficult.
Yeah, I think the only thing they really got right with their new definitions was the part about a player sliding. They did say that, and we see it so many times in the past where, a player is sliding to try to block a cross and they have their arm on the ground as they slide, just as anybody would do. And the ball strikes their arm. They're like, oh, their arm's away from their body, so that's a handball. They're saying now that is not. They're saying that is natural now, and that's part of the silhouette and all that. I'm good with that. At least they got that one right. The rest of it, I don't know.
No, I'm 100% fine with that, because the only thing that would be non-natural about that is if you're sliding with your hands up.
Hands
which
up,
is completely unnatural.
Not natural, yes. Hand down,
unless you're on
natural.
like a slip and slide. So other than that, no.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, 2 games tomorrow. Japan, Argentina at noon. Canada, Cameroon at 3. Maybe not. It feels like a little bit of a letdown. These are 2 games where, let's start with you, Jess. I feel like Japan and Canada come in as pretty clear favorites and should take care of business here.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you there. I think these could be some pretty clear-cut wins, but, we haven't had a true, other than the Australia game and Italy, we haven't had a true underdog story. So, as always, we're always rooting for an underdog here.
Yeah, these would be massive underdogs here. Does Argentina or Cameroon, do either one have a shot, Kelly?
I think maybe in my mind, out of the 2 quote-unquote underdogs, I think Argentina has a better shot than not. The only issue that they're going to have is Japan's always been a constant powerhouse. So they're playing against a very, very good team. And since Japan started the coming to the World Cup in, I can't even remember what year now, they have only lost 2 of their opening matches. But those first 2 World Cups they went to were the first 2 losses they had, and they have never lost their opening World Cup match going into any tournament. So I think Argentina have a very, very long road ahead of them. I think out of the 2, though, I would see Argentina as being a possible to pull a real upset. Biani, their midfielder, is one of their better players, and she's also the team captain, and she's actually going on a forward momentum right now with the whole country of Argentina, with them placing a lot more focus on the women's games since they qualified for the World Cup. So I think they've got motive behind them. It's just a matter of whether or not they take that momentum and that motive and the real proud representation of their country coming back into the World Cup and use that as momentum against Japan.
Yeah, I think Japan's the weaker of the 2 favorites, and Argentina could pull a surprise here in that regard. They've made the league professional in Argentina. San Lorenzo has started signing professional players, and it feels like some real progress is being made. I think Cameroon's the stronger team, but they're going up against a better team in Canada that maybe flying under the radar a little bit in terms of the favorites. I think they're in that group, but Canada's not getting quite as much attention as the rest of the elite teams in the tournament. They should be able to get off to a good start here against a Cameroon team that has talent, but is a little, I think, less prepared in these types of tournaments. Canada feels like, as prepared as you're going to find. They kind of feel like England or the U.S. in that regard, a very well-organized veteran group that should come in and just take care of business.
I 100% agree. Cameroon does have some of their own good things going forward, right? So they've got some really good attacking players, like Igana Mout is one of their best scorers. So you should really look for her going into going against Canada defenders, and she has the ability to play really well one-on-one. And then you're also having to realize that, their back line is not the best, so that even though they have a great attacking prowess, they have an issue with defending. So what we're going to see is hopefully a game in which maybe one part of the field steps up, and maybe their defenders actually come and they're a little bit more organized and actually can put Canada on its back heels. That'd be really interesting to watch. I love the idea of Cameroon making it a really hard win for Canada, but it's dependent on who shows up that day.
It's going to be tricky. Canada has been there and done that, and I think they feel like they kind of let themselves down a little bit 4 years ago, where the pressure of being the hosts got to them a bit, and they should have done better in that tournament. We'll see if they can get off to a good start against Cameroon. That's the 3 o'clock. Japan and Argentina is the 12 noon. We'll be back with you tomorrow evening to recap everything from those two and look ahead to the United States opening play on Tuesday. Maybe Jess will be the impartial voice of reason on that one.
Always willing.
We'll see how that one goes. Kelly and I are probably going to be freaking out about it because we're a little worried about this U.S. squad.
A little worried. I have gotten into, once again, I get on arguments on Twitter. I don't know what it is, but I have not been silent about my pick for the World Cup. I feel like it's France all the way, as they've shown with their amazing debut. But I honestly, I want U.S. to do well. I really, really do. But it's a matter if what team shows up. Honestly, it is. They
can't do worse than the men.
They cannot. You're absolutely right.
I was trying not to talk about that, Jess.
As we saw today. But yeah, no, they have every opportunity. They have every talent. They have every skill to win this whole thing. Again, as we see, is they're still number one in the world. Can they do a repeat? Very possibly. But once again, it's going to depend on the tactics that are chosen and what team shows up.
Plenty to dig into tomorrow. Thanks, y'all, for listening. We'll be back tomorrow night.